Hello, I'm Pat Wilson, and today we're going to start a project using Goldie red iron clay. All the Goldie clays come in powder form, and you're probably more used to receiving silver metal clay in a lump form where it's already damp and ready mixed. But it's mixing powdered clays, it's just one extra step that you have to do, and it's really quite straightforward. So first of all, we'll just go through the materials that you're going to need. So first of all, your packet of clay. Then you're going to need a small spatula like you get in an artist shop, and a mixing bowl. Anything that is glass or ceramic will do. And then you need to introduce water in very small amounts, very conservatively. In this I'm going to use distilled water, which I've decanted into an old cosmetic spray bottle that I've washed out really thoroughly. You're going to need a container, glass or plastic, to store your clay in when you've made it into lump form. Although clay in powder form isn't toxic, the manufacturers recommend that you wear a face mask when you're mixing it. It's just to keep the very fine dust particles away from your airways. This is an example of a mask that you can get from Metal Clay Limited. It's got a little valve on the front. You fit it comfortably over your head and your ears, and then the important thing is that you pinch the metal clip which sits on the bridge of your nose, and that makes the mask fit completely round your face. Finally, the other items that you'll need for mixing your clay is a box of food wrap. You can roll the clay out in between layers of food wrap. You can wrap it around the damp clay once it's mixed. You will need an acrylic roller for rolling out the clay, and also I particularly like to use file covers for putting the clay in between. It's a little bit more sturdy than the cling film, and it gives you a smooth surface before you start to texture. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give the packet a good shake before I even open it, just to mix up the particles. It's important to tip out the entire packet of clay powder into the bowl. This is because the metal powders and the binders may not be in the correct proportions if you attempt to mix it in smaller amounts. So once it's in the bowl, I'm giving it a really good stir to make sure that all the particles are mixed through thoroughly. You can actually see some of the different components of the particles actually in amongst the powder. And it is at this point in particular that you should be wearing your mask. Just so you know, there's 100 grams of clay powder in this bowl. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a few sprays of distilled water. Only a very small amount at the start. I have added quite a lot of water by now, very small sprays at a time, and you can see it's forming a much bigger crumb now. It's beginning to look like almost like a scone or a pastry mixture. It's very nice and pleasant and soft to mix though. So I'm just going to keep on mixing this and showing you at the different stages as I progress with it. Now you can see that the clay is beginning to bind together into quite large lumps. So I'm very close to the stage where I'm going to need to tip it out of the bowl and roll it out. And I'm really glad at this point that I used quite a big bowl for mixing this, because it's meant that nothing has come out over the sides. Now, just to test if it's ready or not, I'm going to take a lump out of the bowl and I'm going to press it together between my fingers. And you can see it's already beginning to form a paste-like structure. So I'm very close to the point where I'm going to remove it and roll it now. So I've just tipped out all the clay onto a double layer of cling film, and I'm just going to pull the cling film up into a little wrapper around the clay, and I'm going to start to squeeze it. And that will just force the water through the metal particles until it starts to cling together like a lump. So this is what my clay looks like after less than 1 minute just kneading it through the cling film. It's quite a large lump and it's still fairly sticky, but I'm going to fold it in half a couple of times and press it through. As you can see, working with base metal clays, your fingers can get quite dirty and stained with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash this off my fingers, and then I'm going to add a product called Gloves in a Bottle, This helps protect your hands from the clays, and in fact the clays from your hands as well, particularly if you've got very dry hands. Mixing 100 grams of clay together all in one go is actually quite hard work. So I think I would recommend, if you're only starting off with powdered clay form, that you maybe try and do it with one of the smaller packets like 25 or 50 grams. But you can see it's all beginning to come together now, and it's beginning to look like a piece of metal clay. This is my piece of clay, which I've just rolled out for the very first time, having placed it between two pieces of file cover paper and very lightly oiled the surface of the paper. Just take the wrap off just to show you what it's coming out like. I keep using food analogies, but it's beginning to look like a piece of sliced meat now. But you can see it's already forming a bit of a gloss on it as well. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to keep folding it, and I won't show you this all the way through, I'll just show you the stages, but I'm going to fold it from the top down to the bottom at about halfway through. Sorry, that hasn't done well. There we go. And then flatten it down, and then I'm going to roll it from the fold outwards to the edges, because you don't want any trapped air bubbles at this stage. It's really important. Two things that you're looking for with the rolling is distributing the water evenly through the clay and ensuring that no air gets trapped as little bubbles in the middle, because if you have bubbles in your clay and you make a piece, well, there's always that possibility that it could expand and explode when it's in the kiln. So just important to spend a bit of time on this rolling stage and get your clay into a lovely condition to work with. As 100 grams of clay is quite a lot to be working with at one time, now that the clay is formed together into a single lump and is very close to reaching full condition, what I've done is I've marked my jar ready to keep it in. I've wrapped the spare lump in a piece of cling film, and just for good measure I'm going to wrap the cling film in a baby wipe, just so that I can ensure that the moisture's held in there until I'm ready to use it. I'm going to pop it into its jar. It's quite big, doesn't really want to go in there, and it's an airtight jar, so put the lid on and put that to one side, and then I'm going to get back to working at rolling out my piece of clay, which is really close to the stage now where I'm going to put it into its final lump form and then put it in cling film in a bag to allow it to rest. The instructions say to let it rest for at least 30 minutes, so I'm going to do that. And I've still got quite a substantial piece of clay, and then I'm going to use this piece for making my test pieces for firing in the kiln, just to check that I've got my temperatures right and that's sintering properly. And I'm also going to do a few test pieces to see how it takes shapes and texture and things like that. So I'll be back with you in a little while. I'm loving the texture of this clay. That's it all finished now. I've kneaded it a number more times through the cling film, and it's all to come together a lovely sort of smooth, slightly glossy lump of clay. I don't know if you can see it there. Can you see the gloss and the shine on it? That's what you're looking for. It's been a great packet of clay. I've never used Goldie clays before, and I certainly have never used iron clays before, and it has come together really straightforward and easy, and so far so good, and I would recommend it to anybody at this particular point. So the next time you see this will have rested for a while, and I'll be starting to work on it.